Welcome to the Gamers Tavern. This intro is going to be a little bit on the short side because I'm still in the middle of my move and the new studio isn't quite set up yet. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of an echo here. Echo! That's why I sound a little bit roomy. This week, however, we have two amazing guests, Grady Elliot and the Dungeon Bastard himself, Tom Lommel, talking about conventions. Convention season is upon us. I don't know if any of you tried to get on the Gen Con registration today. Apparently that was a massive, However, we're going to spend this episode talking to you about how to survive a convention, what to do before, during, and after the con to make sure that you are able to function and enjoy it to the best ability you can. So grab a drink from the bar and take a seat at the table in the corner, and we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
Don't think you have enough time to read the latest book? Well, you've got time to listen to us every week, so why not listen to your favorite books with Audible? Their library of over 150,000 audiobooks is the largest on the internet, all professionally produced with talented readers. Click on the link in the show notes at gamerstavern.org to get a 30-day free trial, including a free audiobook. Or, do you already know you want to subscribe now and don't need a trial? Then you can get your first 3 months half off for only $7.49. Catch up on Game of Thrones before the new season, reread the old Dragonlance series, or refresh yourself on the classic cyberpunk stories from William Gibson and Neil Stephenson. Sign up for Audible today by clicking on the link in the show notes at gamerstavern.org.
Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Gamers Tavern podcast. I'm your host, Ross Watson.
And I'm Daryl Mott Jr.
And tonight we have with us some really great guests. We've got the Dungeon Bastard himself, Tom Lommel.
Yes, I'm Tom Lommel. I'm the writer and creator of Dungeon Bastard, where I appear as my alter ego, Bill Cavalier, the Dungeon Bastard. Yes.
Right, so Tom is not actually the Dungeon Bastard. He plays that character. So
it's true.
Let me be clear on that. And my good friend and fellow RPG professional, Grady Elliot.
Yeah, I'm the creator of the RPG known as Terracide, which was released for the Hero System in 2011. And the Savage Worlds edition will be released sometime late in 2014, if all goes well. So later this year, look for that.
Okay, so tonight we have these two gentlemen on to talk to us about surviving gaming conventions. This is our guide to convention survival, and this is the very first part of that. We're probably going to do some later parts. But before we jump into all that, we're going to do what we always do here on the Gamers Tavern. We're going to ask our guests to give us a little bit about who they are and where you, the listeners, might know them from. It's called the Gaming Character Sheet. Let's start with Tom. Tom, what is your gaming character sheet like?
You know, even though the Dungeon Bastard himself would probably disavow it, I am most likely your gaming bard. You have probably, hopefully seen me as the Dungeon Bastard, or perhaps in some other gamer-related activities. So yeah, that's what I'm most known for. I'm also known for playing Doug Douglason in the series Fear of Girls. So those are probably the two kind of like signpost gamer-related things that you might have caught me on. I was also a moderator for many years on Monty Cook's forums back when he ran the Malhavoc Press.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, 2 levels in Wizard, 9 levels in Bard. I currently live in Los Angeles where I'm pursuing my career as an actor and writer and entertainer.
Are you an elf?
Am I an elf? Ooh, boy, some days I feel like I have the constitution of an elf. No, I don't. I don't have the pointy ears. If there was a half dwarf, maybe, because I have the bulbous nose and the gap teeth.
Ooh.
I don't know that my feet are hairy enough to be halfling. So maybe some sort of off-brand human, you know, somebody from the somebody from the barbarian wilds of Minnesota who has gone forth to seek his fame and fortune.
Are you from Minnesota, for real?
I'm originally from Minnesota. That is correct. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
wow.
Born and raised.
Yeah, Ross lived up there for a while.
Yeah.
He worked for Fantasy Flight.
That's right.
Oh, nice. Yes. In fact, back when they were originally doing their big magnum opus Midnight movie, I was involved in the very early stages of being in the cast of that. But then I moved to L.A., so it just fell out. So.
Ah, yes, the Midnight Chronicles film.
Yes, Midnight Chronicles, which was ambitious. Really, I mean, it looked fantastic. So, and a lot of my friends are in it. So,
Yeah, well, almost every person who ever worked at Fantasy Flight is in it. Who was there at the time. Well, Midnight Chronicles is extremely ambitious. Is a great word to use for it. I always say, like, I can't believe a gaming company made a movie, and here it is.
You know what, though? I mean, at the time, you would have said, I can't believe a gaming company made a movie. Now, here we are 8 years later, and, I mean, everything that they did, very doable on probably, like, I don't know what they spent. I have no idea, but you could do that on an aggressive marketing budget if you really wanted to.
Yeah, well, technology certainly has improved, that's for sure. And just, the ability to edit and so forth. But
yeah.
Let's ask about Mr. Elliot. Mr. Grady Elliot, what is your gaming character sheet like?
Definitely a jack of all trades. I was a gamer for a long time before I really did anything of note. In 2007, 2008, I assisted with the organization of HeroCon in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and that was Ross Watson's baby. Really, he was the driving force behind HeroCon. That was a small local convention that we both helped to organize, and I was one of the people involved with that. It was right about that time I started working seriously on writing Terracide as something that would be eventually published. Mainly because I started doing Terracide scenarios as convention games at that convention. People were like, "Do you have any plans to publish this?" And I was like, "Are you kidding? That'd be too much work." Of course, it got published. They pushed me, so that was really where it all started. I think, as far as professional gaming, if there is such a thing.
Are you a genetically enhanced Russian space soldier?
I'm pretty much plain vanilla human.
Oh, okay.
Wow, can I be genetically enhanced space soldier? Can I take that over? What do I have to do? Maybe by the end of the podcast, I will get there.
I've got them they're in the game. You can be one in Terracide.
They're kind of awesome.
They are.
Speaking of that, I think I will point out that while Grady has many powers and abilities on his character sheet, he does also have a curse listed on that character sheet. That is the curse of rolling dice. I have never seen anyone roll as poorly as Grady Elliot when it comes to the D20.
Oh, that's true.
Am I right or wrong?
Oh, game science saved my game. I can roll some bad dice.
Grady, let me ask you a question, though. Is there someone in your group where it's dice karma? Because I had that in my group where one guy would roll absolutely, like, just abysmal every single time. And on the flip side, there's another guy in my group who I've seen him roll 3 natural 20s in a row.
Well,
he has ridiculous dice luck.
I can roll 20. I can roll a 20 exactly when I shouldn't. Like, when I have chosen the absolute worst course of action and I'm doing something terribly wrong, I'll roll a 20.
But that doesn't transfer
like that.
to anyone else, huh?
Right.
There's no one in your group no one who benefits from your horrible dice luck. You just bring everybody down.
Not so much.
Grady has learned, though, all of his characters have all of the abilities that do not require dice rolling. He, specifically, does this make me roll something? Okay, good. So, all right. Next, we're going to just briefly talk about what we've been playing lately here on the show. Why don't we start with Daryl? Daryl, what have you been playing lately?
Well, last week I talked about this really addictive web-based game I've been playing called 2048. And I found a new version of it. It's called Iron 26, and it is the same gameplay premise, except for instead of matching numbers to grow, you're matching elements. And it's supposed to simulate fusion in a star's core, and you're trying to get to iron for the star's core to be a full-fledged star. And I keep getting friggin' magnesium, and I can never get past it, because it won't fuse with anything.
You can make a volcano with it, I understand.
What good does that do me if I'm making a star, though?
All I'm saying is in grade school, we learned how to make, volcanoes.
Yeah.
What about anything else? Any other role-playing games or computer games?
Yeah, been working on a secret project, trying to do a little bit on that. Can't really talk about it yet, though. But,
all right.
But it's something that's really, really good, and it's something I'll be able to talk about after Gen Con, I think, based on how I'm understanding the legalities at the moment.
Vague thing is vague. Got it.
Yes.
And you still want to play Birthright?
Oh God, yes.
All right. Well, that's good.
I just got off of editing the Birthright episode, and it's like stuck in my brain too. So,
all right, Mr. Lommel, what have you been playing lately?
There's been several things. I'll just run through like 3 of them really quick. So one of my mainstays, one of the like beer and pretzels games that I love, is a game called Martian Dice. And if you like zombie dice. Martian Dice is a very similar concept where you're trying to roll particular combinations to score points, and there's dice. There's faces of the die that count against you, and there's faces that you can use to negate that and whatnot. My issue with zombie dice is that it's basically you get to the 2 shotguns rule, and then you're done. Like, the smart play there is just keep rolling till you get 2 shotguns and then quit. And there's not enough depth of strategy. While with Martian Dice, it's got a little bit more kind of push your luck element to it. You can make a few more intuitive choices without making it this kind of insane game that you have to spend hours to figure out. So when I have friends who are like not heavy gamers, or we just have like 20 minutes, you want to play something fun, I'll break out Martian Dice. So I've been enjoying that. I've really been enjoying Lords of Waterdeep. I don't know. I mean, it's been out
that's
for
a great game.
A year.
No, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, Lords of Waterdeep, and it's interesting because mostly I play a 2-player, but I recently played a 3-player game, and I will say, like, I find that it's one of those games that I first played it on an iPod, and the screen was a little too small for me to really understand everything that was happening with it, and then I actually played the physical game at the tabletop, and it was like, oh, now it all makes sense. So if you don't have a tablet, and also the physical game is just gorgeous. So yeah. I really like Lords of Waterdeep a lot. I'm really enjoying playing that. And then the thing that I just played this past weekend is Quarriors. Have any of you played Quarriors? I have. Yeah. So dice drafting game.
It was designed by my good friend who I worked with at Fantasy Flight.
I like it. I feel like it was designed not specifically for a 2-player game, because in a 2-player game, I kind of felt like I was either losing because I wasn't getting enough monsters out. I like it. There's just a few tweaks that I want to make to it to make it a little more aggressive in your face. I feel like it's probably an interesting game, like really like hits a sweet spot, like around 4 players. But playing it head to head, there wasn't a lot I could actively do to keep from losing or to keep myself from winning, which sounds weird, but in a 2-player game, it was like, well, I put some people out, and then you just roll all quiddity, so I guess I don't have anyone to attack, so I'm automatically going to score points. So I love dice, I love custom dice, and I like the customization of playing the cards out so that you get a lot of different variations in the mix. But it was a new game to me, and it was something that I think I have to play through a few more times to get and play with a few different people in order to get a full kind of opinion of it. Lords of Waterdeep 2 plays very differently when you're playing 2 versus 3 or 4 people.
Are you playing it straight, or do you have any of the expansion? Well, the expansion. It's like a 3-part in one expansion.
For Quarriors or Lords of Waterdeep?
Lords of Waterdeep.
I've just played the straight game so far.
You might want to look into the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion. I actually gave it my expansion award here when we did our award show for Gamers Tavern. It adds another layer of element to it because there's all sorts of new adventures to go on. There's all sorts of new encounters. And then there's a new resource called Corruption.
Nice.
And it opens up the game a lot. So if it starts getting a little bit boring to you, definitely pick that up.
Yeah, so far I haven't been bored by Lords of Waterdeep, so but I'm definitely looking forward to trying out the expansion.
And Mr. Grady, what you been playing?
Lately, last few months, I've actually been playing Pathfinder, and that's a really popular game in these parts. We had our
most popular in the world, according to all the internet research.
Our local convention here last month, I think something like, over half of the games were Pathfinder Society. I'm not in Pathfinder Society, but I'm enjoying learning about Pathfinder. I hadn't actually tried it until just a few months ago. The exciting thing about this game for me is that the GM, this is the first time he's ever GM'd anything, and he is so enthusiastic about getting to do this that even though he's, it's kind of rough going because he's learning as he goes, it's just great to see somebody new to the hobby, learning to do this stuff. And so that's kind of the best part about it for me. He's saying he needs a break, and I can understand that. He's got 4 players who are all older than him and more knowledgeable than him, and we're kind of tough on him sometimes. So he's saying he wants to take a break before he continues with the campaign. So I said, okay, I can play test my stuff. I've got this game I'm publishing later this year, so I posted some playtest files online for everybody, and they're pretty excited about trying that out for a few weeks too. And so I'm going to be teaching some new people to play Savage Worlds in a few weeks and doing another playtest of my new game, and we're all going to be doing that in a few weeks. We're really excited about that too.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that brings to me. I've been playing... Actually, we're starting a new campaign of Arduin Bloody Arduin, which is the new version of Arduin Grimoire. My friend Monty St. John for Emperor's Choice Games is running that. Arduin's just about at its 40th year anniversary, which is one of the oldest game settings in the industry. It's really cool. It's kind of a crazy land full of everything, in sort of the Rifts fashion, and I really like it. I'm continuing to play my Avengers Next Generation game, which will be tomorrow. And we're still playing the Shadowrun Game Table game, which will be on Friday. Let's see. Lastly, I think I want to do a quick shout out to a friend of mine, Matt Greenfield. He wanted to mention that he's doing a Kickstarter for a project called Guild of Shadows, which is kind of a weird but cool expansion for Savage Worlds where you can play as a thieves guild, and he's really trying to get that feel of the Scott Lynch, Liza Locke Lamora novels or the Brent Weeks novels. He's really trying to get that feel, that tone of playing thieves where it's not about the spells or the muscle, it's about the planning and the guile, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. I went in on this.
Yeah, if you're interested in checking it out, look for Guild of Shadows on Kickstarter.com. So that is going to take us to the Tavern Tales. In Tavern Tales, we're just going to ask you guys to briefly give us a cool story about a die roll, a very memorable die roll in your gaming history. Let's start with, since I gave him so much shit about it, Grady, what's a memorable die roll story you have for us?
Okay. Oh, just last week, the Inquisitor that I'm playing is seriously gimped because he's down 2 levels because he got raised from the dead. And he was carrying this item which had 1 use of Dispel Evil on it, and we run into a demon that was way above the challenge rating for our party, and it's 40 feet in the air. None of us can fly, and it's generally ruining our day. And he's been sitting out a lot of fights because he's 3rd level, the rest of the party's 5th level, and he's like, nope, I'm done. And I actually had a new character that I just brought in who was same level as the rest of the party, and he's like, I got nothing. He can't touch this thing. Inquisitor comes running up with this talisman that's got Dispel Evil on it. He hands it to the Paladin, and he's like, I'm going to get this thing down here, and you're going to Dispel Evil on it. He whips out his sword, and he uses Judgment on it to turn it into a good aligned weapon, and he starts trash-talking the demon. He makes a bluff check. Of course, he rolls a 20 on it to bluff the demon to come down and get him. He's using himself as demon bait, and he's 3rd level. And the demon blows his sense motive rolls, and of course the demon's coming straight at him. Except it didn't come down to get him. It used Magic Jar to possess him. And I'm like, oh, I am so screwed. It worked out okay, though, because now the demon's possessing him. It's got his touch AC, and Dispel Evil requires a touch attack to dispel the demon. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. Now the demon's got my touch AC. My touch AC is the worst in the whole party. It's a sitting duck. So the paladin standing next to me has to make a touch AC attack with a target number of like 11. And the GM's like, wait, did you do that on purpose? And I'm like, maybe. So that's not the way you're supposed to do that, but it worked. I rolled a 20 on bluff, but I'm not sure if I should have or not.
No, I think as long as it works out,
Yeah, you're not supposed to let the demon possess you.
Well, that depends on the game, but yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mr. Lommel, what about you? Have you got a great story about a memorable die roll?
This was a couple campaigns ago, and we were playing in Monty Cook's city of Tallis. I was DMing, and the players got involved with the mafia in the wrong way, right? So, the good way to get involved in the mafia is to start working for them. But the party had decided, they were really big into, running a business. They wanted to have something that they owned, that they ran, and so they came across this small keep that was inside the city, and it became their base of operations. But they were like, well, hey, why not let's run a business, so let's start a casino. Well, of course, the local crime lords came around and were like, hey, great, we heard you're running a casino. Why don't you give us what, we're gonna cut you in for 50% of the profits. We're gonna be generous. So 50% of whatever you make, we're down.
Nice casino you got here. It'd be a shame if anything were to happen to it.
Right. And
at least they were nice enough to take it off the net and not the gross.
Not the gross. Right. Well, I don't know much about the mob, but
we tell the entertainment industry it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, legally they can only take 10% here and 10% there, but you end up paying anyway. So at any rate, they got involved in this this ongoing kind of basically mob war, where the mob would send enforcers out to try and collect, and they would keep trying to do stuff to fend them off. And at one point, one of the horrible crime bosses rides a nightmare around town. Right?
Ooh,
that's
classic.
That's her shtick. Is guess what? Here I am. Come, what are you going to do about it? I ride a nightmare across the skies of Tallis. And and so she came down and just started just dusting them with stuff. Dropping spells and, having her mooks come and wipe them out. And they were 9th level, so this was way out of their league. And I'm like, okay, well, she's going to come down and she's going to take whatever she wants and then she's going to get away, right? And she's just pulverizing the party, and she steals whatever item that she needed from them. And as she's flying away, now they're doing some pretty interesting, my players definitely know how to min-max a character. And so they're doing some hardcore damage, but she's like, I'm going to grab this thing and get out of here. And it just as she's getting up out of bow range, she's at the very edge of bow range, the archer is like, all right, you know what? I'm going to take one final shot at her. And I'm like, yeah, right, buddy. You know what? You're at the extreme end of range here. You're going to need to, critical to even, connect or whatever. The guy drops the dice down. Boom. Now, not only does he roll a natural 20, but then he has to confirm it, right? Rolls another natural 20.
Nice.
He's using his longbow, so he does triple damage to this thing. I don't remember what else he had done to juice this roll. But needless to say, at the very edge of bow range, he just hoists his bow, squints with one eye, and drops the major crime lord in the center of the whole campaign. I'm like, well,
that was awesome.
I guess somebody's gonna have to step in to fill the void because they just took down. Yeah, no. What? So what? She's a shape-shifting demon that rides around in a nightmare. She's still susceptible to magic arrows.
Nice. That's a great story. I gotta admit, I'll be remembering that one for a while. These kinds of stories are the things that you learn and hear about not only at the game table, but also at a gaming convention. You see how I did that there, Daryl?
Nice.
Nice little segue. So now we're going to talk about the Convention Survival Guide. And Grady has helped organize conventions before, and Tom's been involved with the convention operations at Gen Con and things like that. So you guys are going to be good guests for us to talk to the listeners about how to survive your gaming convention experience. Why don't we start with, I'm going to throw this out there for you guys. What are the things you need to do before you go to the convention?
Buy your ticket?
Okay, yes.
Get your badge.
Definitely. Yeah. You can also get that at the door, though.
Yeah, I would say finding hotel arrangements is probably your number one concern, actually, depending upon what. Well, no, it doesn't depend upon what convention you go to, whether it's a small
PAX.
con or a big one like Gen Con or whatever. Yeah, any size convention, I think making an intelligent choice about where you're going to stay is like your number one concern.
So how do you make an intelligent choice about your hotel? What are the parameters?
I think the important things that you have to juggle are number one, what sort of expense can I afford? Number two, how close is it to the actual activities that are going on? And then number three, am I going to room with somebody to try and mitigate, or to balance those factors to be an optimal blend? And picking a roommate, honestly, is kind of an art in and of itself too. So for me, like, it's tough for me because I have, so the big convention that I go to, obviously, every year is Gen Con.
30 years in a row, right?
My 30th year in a row, 30th consecutive Gen Con. I started going when I was 4. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
And this one is my first that I'm going to this year. So.
Wow, great. So for me, I have friends who live in town. I'm also involved with NASCRAG, which is the oldest independent role-playing games tournament at Gen Con. They've been holding their tourney for over, I want to say this is their 35th year, 34th year. I'd have to double check, but they've been going on forever. So usually I have a ton of friends who are at the con. So for me to find a room, I can take advantage of my friend's generosity, which allows me to be a little lazy, and I can either bunk with one of my friends or throw in a room with somebody who's already got a good room slot or whatever. Personally, like for me, I don't mind walking a couple of blocks if the accommodations are a little bit better than what maybe I would have like a block away. Because there's some hotels like, how noisy is the place, etc., that sort of thing. How big are the rooms? How many people are you going to room with?
Well, it's important to make sure that your hotel is not also skeevy central. I want to point out, last year I had some good friends who went to Gen Con, and they stayed at a hotel. I unfortunately don't remember the name of it, but they stayed at a place that they knew. I mean, just looking at it, it wasn't safe, and their car got broken into, and all of their stuff that was in that car was stolen. So, word to the wise.
Yeah. So it's things like that you kind of have to like find what's going to work for you and your experience that you want to have in your budget. Like, I'm the kind of person who doesn't mind walking a block or two. On the other hand, like, there's a brand new convention in Madison, Wisconsin. This is going to be its second year, but I went to the first year. They were kind enough to have the Dungeon Bastard as a guest there. And it's called Gamehole Con. And they know the name is a little out there, but that's the name of their gaming space. Like, they used to play in the basement of one of the guys had an office, and they would play down in the basement. So they'd say, well, we're going down to the game hole to get our D&D on or whatever. So they decided to name the con after their gaming space. But like, they have it at a hotel, and absolutely, like, staying there, just being able to go downstairs and then go play. And, I've got an hour off, go upstairs and relax. I mean, I think that's one of the key factors that you have to kind of like also measure in, is like, how much downtime should I try and build into my schedule so that if I need a break, I'm not worn out by day 2.
You may also, when you're thinking about a hotel, think about what you're going to be wearing, especially if you're into cosplay, because some of those costumes are really, really hot, and almost all the conventions happen in the summer. So if you're going to be walking through like half a mile, doesn't sound like much until you're in a full Game of Thrones costume with big heavy wool cloak and leather boots and everything. That's not fun.
Well, let me tell you, I was at a convention called Project A-Con, which is an anime con that happens in Dallas, Texas in July. And, the power went out to the whole hotel because a tornado went through.
Ooh,
So
I remember hearing about this.
So hotel full of sweaty anime nerds. There were people the next year that had badges that said, I survived A-Con 4. So yeah, he's got a point there.
I've been to a couple of Gen Cons where I got a hotel out on a bypass, and I saved a lot of money that way. They were safe hotels, and I stayed I think it was 4 nights. Cost me a couple of $100. And these are like extended stay places where you can do this. You'll have you'll even have a kitchen in your room and everything. And the money you save out there, you can use for parking, which you will need, driving into town. at the convention center. Or cabs. That works too. My point is that it's worth considering all your options.
The money you save on the hotel, being further away, it does, kind of go into the cab fare. But there is, typically at Gen Con specifically, I know they run a shuttle around.
Some places
some
do,
of those,
yeah.
I spent the last 2 years at Gen Con at La Quinta, which is out, I think in that area you're talking about. And La Quinta is fantastic. It is, I would unhesitatingly recommend the La Quinta if you don't mind being a fair bit away from the convention and you don't mind staying. It's just not, it's a nice, secure place to stay. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, poor me. I'm staying at the Hilton Resort downtown.
I think this actually maybe brings up another issue that maybe even comes ahead of choosing a hotel, because I think you ultimately have to ask yourself before you plan any of this is, why am I going to this specific con? Like you talked about an anime con, or you talk about something like Comic-Con versus, a more gaming-oriented convention like Gen Con. Like, what am I going to go there to do? Am I going there for a signing, for a guest? Am I going to go see a preview, or a panel of a movie? Am I going there to play tournaments? Am I going to, get heavy into, like the Magic tournament or something like that? Or am I just going to check out, like, what's new in the vendor hall and what, what new products the gaming companies have out, a little more casual experience. Like, I think you should decide, like, why do I want to go to this thing? What's my main focus? And then kind of, like, organize the rest of your itinerary around that.
What's my motivation for going to the convention?
I am not a Chekhovian or method actor, but yes. What is your motivation? Well, I mean, and honestly, like, if you want to stay way out in the sticks of Gen Con, and admittedly, they know that their hotel space is an issue. They sell out every hotel within a 20-mile radius of downtown Indy.
In 3 or 4 hours this year.
Right. And I went to the press conference that the tourism board had, like the Visitors and Convention Center, like the head of their Visitors Convention Center, like came and talked to the press about what Gen Con was and what it meant. And Gen Con is their number 2 money-making event in terms of like revenues brought into the city, behind one other event.
Indianapolis 500?
No, the Super Bowl. They make more money. More money comes into town and gets spent on Gen Con than the Indy 500.
Oh,
wow.
So, and the Super Bowl was a one-time event. Huh. So, they have a very vested interest in like keeping everybody happy and making things happen, but it's also an immensely popular con. So if you're going to stay way out on the edge of town, well, okay, I can't play an event that goes to 1 a.m. every single night.
Well, you can. You just need to get a cab.
Right. But even then you got to ask yourself, like, what's, unfortunately, like I said, this is my 30th consecutive year. I try not to do 3 or 4 nights in a row till 2 or 3 a.m. Sleep for 4 hours and turn back around and do it. I was just going to say, not only does it get old for you, but you know what? I don't want to be that guy who's sitting there at noon with my group of, with my 2 buddies, and then 4 people come rolling up, and all of them just like are, bags under the eyes and not paying attention to what the DM is saying when he's setting up the scenario, and not. I'm not saying everybody's got to be gaming their best, but don't drag the rest of the group down just because you played, whatever you played until 8 a.m. and decided, I can still make my noon game if I just shower and chug a bunch of Mountain Dew. Be considerate to your other players. It's not like, this isn't something like like a collectible card convention where you can, or Comic-Con. Like Comic-Con, who cares if you're tired? Like, good, well, go sit on the steps. It doesn't affect my experience. On the other hand, if I'm in a gaming session and I'm trying a new game that I'm really jazzed to play, or playing a scenario that I don't get to play with my home group at back in Los Angeles, then I don't want somebody who's being a schlub, because they couldn't take care of themselves. Like, be responsible. I know it's a gaming weekend, but like, be responsible.
No, that's a great point. And this guide is kind of oriented for people who probably haven't gone to a convention before, so it's worth thinking about your scheduling ahead of time, specifically, how late you're going to get back to your hotel room and whether or not you're going to be refreshed for the next day. Those are very, very good points.
And I will say, it's immensely easy to overschedule yourself, to get enthused, because there's so much going on, especially at Gen Con. I mean, it is the marquee convention for the RPG hobby, and there's no way that you can do everything because there's so many great things going. So it's easy to go, oh, you know what, I can fit that in. I can't miss that. You know what? They have one next year. You know,
Yeah,
like take it easy on yourself.
I've noticed even the small conventions have a lot of late events these days, so it's not just Gen Con.
Yeah, it's any convention you go to is going to be like this. All this, we're talking about Gen Con a lot because it's kind of the big one, and if I'm not mistaken, all of us are going to it.
Right.
And so it's kind of the one that's on our minds right now. But this applies no matter how big or small the convention is. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, you want to make sure you're at a hotel that's going to be good. Almost every convention is going to have a website, and it may not be until the week before the event, but they'll have a schedule up with all the panels and all the games and everything. So that's something you can look into in advance.
Yeah, I would recommend take some time, to just like Tom said, take some time to look at and see what you want to go do. But don't freak out. It's his other point. He said don't freak out because it'll be there next year. And that's true. You just can't see everything. I worked Gen Con for 3 years in a row where I spent all day, every day in the game hall, renting stuff. And I swore I swear to God, my next year at Gen Con, I'm just going to go and be a guest and see all the stuff that I never got to see. Well, guess what? I went with a free and open schedule, and I still didn't get to see very much because there's just so much stuff there, And every year I always go, oh man, I wish I'd have been able to see that, But
you've never done True Dungeon, have you?
I never have. Yeah, so there you go. But anyway, those are all really excellent points. What about the passes themselves, the tickets? Now you get a price break if you don't do it at the door. If you pre-register, is what it's called, by buying the ticket in advance. And usually that price drops down about 20-25%. Does that sound about right?
It varies from con to con. One thing you might want to keep in mind and keep track of on the website is sometimes they'll have multiple price breaks. So if you buy it like 6 months in advance, you may get $20 off. If you buy it 3 months in advance, you get $10 off, and then it's whatever at the door. So that's something you want to look into and research that before the tickets go on sale and figure out exactly when in your budget you're going to commit to it, because a lot of them are not refundable either. You may be able to get your hotel reservation back, your car reservation, your plane ticket, your bus ticket, what you haven't bought your gas for your car if you're driving there, but a lot of those con passes are not refundable in any way. So that's something you want to make sure of before you commit to it.
And there's also VIP passes. Have Grady or Tom, have you guys ever done the VIP thing at a gaming convention?
I was actually covering Gen Con last year in my guise as the Dungeon Bastard, and
but you definitely should check out those videos. They're really, really cool, especially the bit with you and the drow.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I've had the opportunity to do some fun stuff, specifically at the con. And last year, as part of that, I had access to the VIP room. I wasn't an actual, full-on VIP. Those tickets are extremely difficult to get. Well, for instance, they have a room on site that's set aside where they have some snacks and they have chairs and tables for you to sit down, and if you want to game with your other VIP friends, great. Or if you just want to relax in a beanbag chair or whatever, you can actually be away from everybody else and have a moment to yourself without having to go back to the hotel. They also get gift bags and things like that. So their VIP experience, it's immensely popular because it's really awesome. The same thing, I like I said, I went to Gamehole Con. I also went to Berserk Con last year, and every con also seems to have a premium type of benefit, whereas whether you may get free soda throughout the weekend or discounts or access to shopping, you can pre-shop the exhibit hall, that sort of stuff. Is that necessary your first year if you haven't been to a con before? I wouldn't sweat that type of stuff, but it's definitely a nice benefit to indulge in when you've got, 4 or 5 cons under your belt and you're like, you know what, I want to treat myself. Also, it helps them out. The more, these VIP passes that they can, account for ahead of time, specifically for the smaller cons, then they know we can count on these people coming, that, it helps them budget and that sort of stuff. Yeah,
the program at Gen Con is called the VIG, for a very important guest, I believe. And I've done it a couple years. The room that Tom's describing is actually one of the big benefits of this whole thing. It's a place, for me, I like to bring a backpack along, with my gaming stuff for when I go to a game, or I'm usually running at least one or playing in at least one. And they have a bag check area. You can just walk in and drop your bag off and then, go do whatever you need to do and come back, pick it up before you go home. It's it's a nice place to just stash that thing, especially if you don't have a hotel room close by, which a lot of people do at Gen Con. So there's that. They also, he mentioned the gift bags. Last year, I just want to point this out. Last year, they had a whole actual, like, luggage bag, like a big luggage size bag full of the brandy new games. It was amazing. And I was actually, I didn't get to pick one of those up. I was what they call a companion VIG level. So I didn't get one, but I was like, man, I would like one of those. Woo! So yeah, the price of the ticket is high, but like the stuff you get, and you get to avoid all the lines. So you could just, you go to that little room and pick up your badge and your tickets. You don't have to wait in line for anything. So,
And you also get early access to the floor. I believe at Gen Con you get it an hour early every day. I'm not sure.
You get an hour early one day. The first day that on Thursday when the convention hall opens for the vendors area, you get to go in an hour early, which is pretty amazing, especially for networking. If you're a freelancer like myself, it's nice to just kind of run around and introduce yourself, throw some business cards around when there's nobody else really in there.
Or if you're a game reviewer, it's great to get those. It's going to sell out every single day at the con. Like last year, the Firefly board game sold out every single day it was there, and there was a scrum when it opened up.
Right.
So getting there early. I don't believe you were actually allowed to purchase anything.
Oh, no,
in the
you
first
can.
hour.
Oh, you can.
You can?
Oh, yeah.
You can? Okay.
Well, let's put it this way. It depends on the vendor. Most of the places I visited were like, yeah, well, they know it's open an hour early. This is a deal that they made with Gen Con. So, yeah, they're ready to sell you something.
Well, make sure to read the policies first whenever you do that at other cons, because some of them you may be able to look around, but you can't purchase anything to make it a little bit more fair. But at least you can be first in line when the sales start.
Right.
I haven't done the VIP thing before, but I get a press badge at most places I go through Any Cool News. So I tend to get a lot of the same perks, early access to the floor, and they have a little press room, which is never as nice as the VIP room. But another thing you might want to look into in some of these VIPs is they'll have extra perks or things. I know Comic Palooza and Animation Celebration in Galveston, two of the cons that Ross and I are going to,
Woohoo!
Are doing some really, really interesting things with their VIP. There are different VIP levels, and some of them include like autograph and photo sessions with some of the celebrities, and it'll be at a discount than buying a pass on its own and buying the photo. So you might get 10% off that way. So if you absolutely know you want to go have your picture taken with James Marsters or Nathan Fillion or whoever, look into that and see if there's one of those VIP packages for that. You might some of them include like a breakfast or a dinner with some of the celebrities. I know Animation Celebration is running, and I'm actually participating in one of these. They're going to be having a VIP with I can't remember what his name is, but it's the voice actor from Ed, Edd and Eddy. And they're doing a late night Cards Against Humanity game that I'm emceeing. And for, I think I want to say it's like $200 to $300 you get to play with a celebrity voice actor. Robert Schwab from Wizards of the Coast is doing one of the same things where he's playing D&D with you. And it's a VIP thing run by one of the designers of the game. So
I'm also running Star Wars Edge of the Empire, so you can play Star Wars Edge of the Empire with one of the designers of the game at
there you
Animation
go.
Celebration. But, I do like taking my picture at Gen Con. I got my picture taken with Ivan Van Norman, where we were beating each other up last year. And I'm going to get my picture taken with Tom if I could find him this year.
I'm a tough man to track down, but usually there's only one guy wearing the sweatbands and a tight T-shirt.
Well, after your Kickstarter, that might change. You started selling them.
That's right. Exactly.
Do a lot of people get their picture taken with you, Tom?
Last year I did get stopped quite a bit. It was very gratifying to have that kind of like fan recognition and that experience. And the Dungeon Bastard is a fun character to play. So, there's always, I'm always willing to stop and pull a ridiculous pose and growl at somebody's cell phone.
And I don't know, I don't know if it's a little early to talk about, but are you going to be doing another World's Worst Dungeon Crawl this year?
I don't have that in the works right now. We'll see what happens. We just wrapped the delivery of last year's World's Worst Dungeon Crawl,
which was awesome, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was a backer on that one. So
for those who are not familiar, the Dungeon Bastard decided to show DMs how you can run an awesome game, even if you use the most trite and cliched encounters possible. And so that was the World's Worst Dungeon Crawl. We did it on Kickstarter last year, and we ran it live for audience of 200 people Sunday morning at Gen Con, and we had guests, elite level backers, and we had some randomly chosen backers, and it turned out to be a really great game. It was really honestly, it's like one of the best games of D&D that I've ever run in my life. So it really turned out to be fun. So
Dice fluffer.
yeah, exactly. So
I've got a question for Grady, actually. Grady, when you're going to a convention, especially, let's say for the listeners, if your first time, you don't really know, what do you pack?
Well, first of all, you treat it like you would any other trip. You take the things you're going to need. You make sure you've got stuff to wear. Make sure you got your toiletries. Make sure you got your whatever medications you're on. And for gamers of a certain age, that can be pretty important. Whatever you're going to need. I've found that when I've had, if you're on a prescription, I've found out the hard way. If your last 6 refills have been refilled like clockwork, the day of the convention is the day that your pharmacy is going to tell you need a doctor's authorization for your next refill. Your doctor's on vacation, their computer system has a glitch, and the pharmacist is not going to cut you one bit of slack. So double check that stuff in advance, or your convention trip's going to be ruined, because you'll be off your meds all weekend. It happens. It really
It'll
happens.
make someone else's con much more interesting, but yours will not be so
For
much
certain
fun.
definitions of interesting. Oh yes.
May you live in interesting times.
Anything can happen. Make sure you've got all the usual things prepared, and then your gaming kit is really important, because you're not going to be gaming at your buddy's house or the game store or wherever you usually game, and the things that you need when you game are not just right there on the shelf. You've got to be completely self-sufficient, especially if you're running a game. You've got to have everything right there at the table. So whatever it is you're going to need, put your books on a PDF. Get all your gaming books in PDF form. Put them on a tablet.
Good idea.
Don't be hauling around 50 pounds of books, because you're going to be that guy who's completely burned out by day 1.5 of the convention.
I have seen someone who seriously injured their shoulder trying to carry about 15 Pathfinder
It was
books.
me. I mean, oh wait, those were hero books. Never mind. There were a lot of books. And make sure you got your dice and all your notes. Again, put them on PDF. Put them on that tablet. Make sure your tablet's got its charger, calculator, Dragon Bone.
Bring an extra charger, actually.
Yeah, do that. Maps, erasable maps, vinyl maps, map paper, whatever you use. Markers for the maps, miniatures.
I'm going to go a little further here. I think if Grady's, saying if you're running a game, bring all these things, and he's not wrong. But I would go a little further. Make sure you bring enough dice for everybody in case they forgot theirs, and bring pre-generated characters, because if you show up, on paper, and if you show up as a GM running your game and you expect everyone to make characters before that happens,
never gonna happen.
Yeah, you're hurting for certain. Just bring pre-generateds and make everyone's experience better.
And make sure if there's anything you have to print out, you print it out beforehand, because the hotels are expensive to print stuff out at. They all have that little office where you can plug in your USB or email it to yourself and print it out, but you're going to be paying way more than you should for ink and paper. One other thing I might want to bring up when we're talking about packing games, if you're a board game player, here's something that I have found out from talking to some people and listening to some other podcasts. If you're flying, call the hotel first to make sure they'll do this, and some of them may charge a fee for it, but mail your board games. Do not try to check them, because some of the components in modern board games can set off false alarms for bomb detectors.
Well, not to mention the guys, they basically drop kick your
Oh,
checked
no.
bags around down there.
As a guy who's going to be dragging sound equipment, yeah, I'm mailing that crap to the Hilton for Gen Con. I'm not trusting that to the... I trust the Postal Service more than I trust airline baggers, if that tells you
That
anything.
raises an interesting decision that should be made. Do you drive or do you fly to a convention? And some of the things you're taking to the convention might make it worth driving, depending on how far away you are.
Yeah, it depends on how far. I mean, like for me, that's always a decision. I'm willing to drive up to say 4 hours. Anything beyond 4 hours, I'm like, yeah, I just want to fly because there's only so much time I really want to spend in the car these days.
If I can get there in a day, I'll consider driving or carpooling because I don't drive. But anything for longer than that, I'm flying. Anything that's out of state, and considering I live in Texas, that's a lot of state. But anything out of state, I'm getting on an airplane or even a bus if I have to. But one thing you've got to realize is you may save money on gas versus the airline ticket, but you've got to worry about parking. You've got to worry about securing your car.
Wear and tear.
And you've got to worry about the wear and tear on your car. You're going to want to get your oil changed before you go and do a checkup because you do not want to break down on some Indiana cornfield somewhere.
Right.
But the other big one is time. If you've got to weigh that savings of money against the extra time. How much is your time worth?
Well, not just that, but you're going to arrive exhausted if you drive all day. I've driven to Gen Con from Maryland, which was a hell of a drive, let me tell you. It's a good 12 hours, right? So, yeah, you get there and you're done. When you drive that long and you get somewhere, you're done. You get out of the car, you go to bed, and that's it.
And speaking of hotels, is one thing I really want to ask you to consider if it fits your budget. You may want to consider checking into the hotel the day before the con happens and staying the day after, so that way you're not at the end of the con exhausted. Then you've got to deal with the airport, or then you've got to drive home. You're not arriving at the con already exhausted from travel. So that's something you may want to consider if you can afford the extra hotel days.
Gen Con is doing a great thing these days. There's a group called the Kentucky Fried Gamers, and they actually have extended the best 4 days of gaming to the best 5 days of gaming. Because on Wednesday, the day before the con, you can go to the Ram, which is a pub there right next to the convention center, and you can actually play a ton of games all day, which is they do it on a volunteer basis. It's basically, free. I did it last year for Edge of the Empire, and it was awesome. So, and I was running Edge of the Empire, I wasn't playing, but, yeah, so there's opportunities for you to do things if you go a day early, typically. Maybe you can meet people at the hotel bar, like a celebrity. That's probably where they'll be the night before.
That's actually, I found the best time to meet guests is the night before the con starts, hotel bar. The Sunday or Monday, whatever your convention ends, that night at the hotel bar, because they're usually flown in a town they don't know what to do. A lot of us in the game industry, we're drinkers. Okay. There's a reason why I call this show the Gamers Tavern. So
we're social drinkers.
And as long as you're nice and polite and respect boundaries, they'll almost always be cool with you coming up, saying hi, introducing yourself. Sometimes I got to hang out with, the guy who played Cyril Farrell in Game of Thrones, just because I was there a day early and he was sitting there with some people.
And I can tell you this, if you meet Grady at a hotel bar, he drinks Jägermeister. Tom, what is your favorite drink if we run into you the night before the con?
Oh, I'm pretty easy to please. Usually any kind of beer is just fine. I don't, honestly, Gen Con for me is, there's so much going on that I don't really have an opportunity to go too far overboard with celebrating. I'm there to see people, to meet people, to host events, to get coverage and all that sort of stuff. It's in some ways it's a working type of vacation for me, and that's why I definitely am a fan of stay an extra day. While everybody else, it's Sunday at 3:00 and everybody's rushing to get to the airport and everybody's checking out at the same time. Do you know what you're doing? You're hanging out. You're going through your loot bag going, oh, man, I can't wait. Hey, you know what? Hey, guess what? We have nothing to do. Let's play this before we go and get hamburgers at 6:00.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's exactly why staying an extra day is good. Tom nailed it. Absolutely.
The other piece of advice that I would have in terms of like packing and planning and stuff like that is like Grady said, bring what you need, but remember, you don't actually need that much if you're just playing. I feel like it is the GM's responsibility to provide characters unless you're playing Pathfinder Society, where obviously it's your job to bring your own, or the GM has said in the event registration, bring your own character. But otherwise, you need to have maybe 2 things. You need to have a pencil. You need to have some paper. That's mandatory. You should have dice at the table, but you don't necessarily need to bring your giant dice bag. Guess what? There's going to be a vendor there. They're going to sell some dice. It's going to cost you maybe $9, $12. patronize the people who are there. Who doesn't need another set of dice? Buy some dice there. You don't have to pack your own. You got a new set of dice to break in. It's something to be excited about. But definitely bring your own.
Bring a set or two, and if they start screwing up on you, go to the vendor hall, buy another set, train them right.
Exactly.
Tom says to patronize the vendors, not the GMs or the other players. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Well, I will be honest. If I'm a GM and somebody brings me a little bribe, I'm not adverse to eating your snack candies or whatever. Which is another thing that you need to think about, which is there's probably not some, you probably have so much going on. There's not a great opportunity to buy food on site or to walk to a restaurant where it's going to be slammed or whatever. Help yourself out by packing some snacks in your bag. Go to Costco.
If you have any sort of food allergy or anything like that.
Yeah, if you have dietary requirements, definitely. But I would say regardless, whoever you are, there's nothing worse than somebody getting just hangry in the middle of a 4-hour gaming session, and you're like, and I've had this happen where guys will be like, oh, you know what, I hang on, you know what, I need a break. I'll be right back. And then they get up from the table and they're gone for 20 minutes to go buy their $9 slice of greasy pizza or whatever it is. You're doing a disservice to the DM and you're doing a disservice to the other players at the table if you don't, use a little common sense and pack yourself a little protein bar or something.
Yeah, Power Bars, oatmeal bars are like my favorite. Those are good and easy to travel with, and they don't care if they get hot,
Trail mix is another good one.
Trail mix.
Jerky. Though make sure, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, make sure if you're eating a lot of jerky, shower, please.
That's another thing you should bring with you is soap and deodorant is just unquestionably an important thing. Use it, bring it, bring it. I can't emphasize that enough.
And there's one last thing I want to talk about in packing. We definitely talked about make sure you've got enough clothes. I always make sure to bring extras because, again, big guy, summer, most of the cons I go to are in Texas. I usually bring 2 sets of clothes for every day. When I'm at the con and the vendor hall and everything else, I wear my daytime set. I go to, whenever it's about time to, okay, we're about to switch to the evening events, I'll go to the hotel room, shower, and change again so I'm not wearing the same sweaty, stinky clothes all day long.
If you don't bring deodorant, you may find people patronizing you. Just saying.
Yeah.
Not in a good way.
The other thing that's changed quite a bit in the years that I have been going, like all of those things are like, that's like, it doesn't matter whether it's 1990 or 2014, like that advice applies. Bring yourself something to eat, take care of your personal hygiene and whatnot, be a friend to the rest of your gamers. But, Grady made a great point where it's like, if you can now get all your rule books, you should be able to find a way to get, the essential rule books onto a tablet or onto your phone or whatever. One of those, not necessarily an extra charger, because sometimes an outlet is tricky to find, but you can get one of those portable rechargers for you can get a giant one for $60.
I have a solar one.
I brought one
and for 20.
Daryl, when was the last time you were at a convention where there was enough light coming into the convention hall?
It also charges by cord. You're talking to a guy who, if he didn't have a day job, would be a vampire.
Listen, the reason why I say bring an extra charger is I lost one at Gen Con, and the only reason I was able to be okay is because I had a second one. If I had gone and lost my first charger on the first day, which I did, I would have been screwed, right? My phone would have ran out, my tablet would have ran out, I'd have been just, bumming around completely Luddite for the rest of the weekend.
And I will tell you right now, you will be everyone's best friend at the bar if you have one of those batteries Tom was talking about, because there's someone who didn't bother going back to the hotel room and has been on the phone all day long, reading either or the tablet or whatever, and they really need to recharge. So
I burn my phone out just taking pictures, checking Twitter. I mean, I think Twitter is an amazing resource when it comes to being at the con and trying to figure out okay, what hot game is everybody buying? What events are happening that I really want to get in on? What impromptu gaming session is going on in some hotel lobby that I'd like to drop over to? It's so much easier now to network via Twitter, even if it's just, direct messaging or whatever, than it is to, okay, now give me your phone number and I will call you or I will text you. So you burn a lot of battery just between taking pictures and checking in on social media.
Best
That's
machine
what
I've found for battery life. I've got a tablet called the Asus Transformer. It's got a backup battery in the detachable keyboard. They've got 4 hours each, and between the two of them, I get 8 hours of use out of that thing. It's awesome for conventions.
the texting is what I often use to communicate at a convention rather than trying to call because the airwaves are just full. And it's really hard to hear people. So what I use is a program called WhatsApp, WHATSAPP, WhatsApp. And it's a free way to text. As long as you're both signed up to it, you can just text to each other all day and it doesn't charge you anything.
Yep. And if you don't like that one because Facebook just bought them out, there's another independent one called Kik, K-I-K, that does kind of the same thing.
Yay, Facebook. Buying up all the stuff.
Hi, this is Nick Jaworski, and you may not realize it or probably don't care, but I edit some of the shows here on the Gamers Tavern Podcast Network. If you like podcasts but love audio editing, then I have great news for you. I have my own show titled 1 Degree of Separation, and you can listen to it right now and subscribe at onedegreewithnick.com. The show is kind of hard to describe. Each episode is basically an experiment that contains original music, stories, interviews. It's probably just best if I quickly show you some recent episodes. Try to see what you had. If you had anything interesting for me.
Have you ever waterboarded somebody?
There's actually a story of Abraham Lincoln, a very superstitious man, seeing his own doppelganger multiple times over a couple of nights. When looking in the mirror, he saw two faces, his normal face, and then a pale, ghostly one that worried him. I have to get back to editing right now, but you should go check out all of that and more at onedegreewithnick.com. Thanks.
And we're back with episode 30 of the Gamers Tavern podcast with Tom Lommel and Grady Elliot. And we were just finishing up the first part of the Convention Survival Guide, where we talked about how you get to the convention and what you should do before you get there and how to plan it all out. So now we're actually at the convention. We've listened to everybody's advice. We're there a day early because Grady said it was good. We're planning to be there a day late because Tom said it was good. So now what? What is the next step? What is the next thing we need to know to survive our convention experience?
There's people you want to meet at the convention, friends of yours, people you're planning on actually physically meeting there. Get their contact info before you go.
And how would you do that?
Email,
Google,
Facebook,
NSA agent,
instant message, whatever. Just
stalk them.
Make sure you know where they're going to be or how to reach them once you're there, because you might not have access to your usual means of talking to them if they're Facebook friends or whatever.
And just because you have Facebook or Google Plus or whatever on your phone, don't assume that they will have it, because they may never check their phone. I'm going to tell you right now, at a convention center, my ringtone is the TARDIS, which is a very distinctive ringtone when I'm hanging around in Southeast Texas.
Not so much
not
at
so
Gen Con.
distinctive at a con, no.
Yeah. Not that you're going to hear your phone if you're in the dealer's hall, just FYI.
Yeah, I actually ripped a pocket because I kept taking my phone out so many times at one convention because I kept carrying TARDISes. TARDISes. Okay. But yeah, my phone, I reached in too fast one time and it just hung up, and I wore my damn pocket out on a pair of pants. So another good reason to pack a second pair, because I was able to go back to the hotel room and change.
I think, too, the other thing that you should do when you get there, definitely check in with everybody that you're trying to meet up with. And like I said, for me, my preferred means of communication is Twitter, but that's simple and easy. You're right. You might not get reception, where certain parts of the building or, whatever hotel you're staying at or what have you. That's the advantage to having an app type of thing like WhatsApp or Twitter or whatever, that if you can get on Wi-Fi at a Starbucks, you can shoot some messages off and maybe get some replies. I would also say take some time to kind of get into the vibe of the town in terms of figure out, okay, this is my hotel room. What restaurants am I going to want to eat at? Where am I going to want to have breakfast tomorrow morning? How far is it to the convention center? How big is the convention center layout? If you can kind of walk and figure out, oh, okay, so here's where the vendor hall is. Here's where most of the CCG gaming is going to be. Here's where I'm going to try some board games. Here's where I'm going to, play, D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, all the role-playing games. Kind of have an idea of where those things are, so that when it's 10 minutes to 1 o'clock and you have to be there, oh, okay, it's not a 20-minute walk. I can make it or whatever. The other thing you have to reckon with is, hey, that Starbucks, that looks great. Hey, I'll just grab a cup of coffee and right before I go over to the convention center and play in my game or run my game or whatever. Guess what? Every other nerd has the same exact idea. So get there half hour, 45 minutes, an hour early. And that way you're not worried about, planning your time and sweating in line just because you're anxious about getting to your event in time, much less what the weather's like.
That's another good one. Even if you're planning on your hotel because they have a continental breakfast, you're thinking, I don't even have to spend money. You can just stop by there. Go early or have a backup plan, because everyone else that's staying at that hotel is going to hit that breakfast bar at the same time too, and they are going to run out of waffles.
Once again, we keep talking about Gen Con because it's the one we all know probably the best. But, if you're willing to spend a little money, there's a really, really nice breakfast buffet right across the street from the convention center at the JW Marriott. I heartily recommend it. It's, $15, $16, but you go, it's all you can eat buffet of good quality breakfast food. So it'll keep you fortified for most of the day.
Tom touched on a good point, though, about locating where your events are going to be. That's something you want to do at the beginning of any convention, is making sure that you know where you're supposed to be and when you're supposed to be there, whether you're a GM or a player. It's true for any convention, but there's something about Gen Con that should be noted, is that there are 2, possibly 3 hotels with the word Marriott in their name. That's true. And that has caused endless amounts of confusion when people realize 5 minutes after the hour they're in the wrong hotel and the one they're supposed to be at is probably 10 minutes away.
It's happened to me.
I think it got me once too.
And that's also good for when you're checking into the hotel. If you've made travel arrangements, make sure you're going to the right hotel, because there are 2 Hiltons downtown. And that's why I'm not afraid to say, hey, I'm staying at the Hilton downtown, because all of our Gamers Tavern fan stalkers won't be able to find me because they won't know which one.
I think the other thing too is when I actually get to the hotel, I get to the con, and I've had my little settle in, like, okay, here we are, and I crack open my suitcase. That's when I kind of divide my suitcase into, this is what I'm going to need for this day. Grady talked about bring what you need, but within that, bring what you need for that particular day. Hey, if I'm going to spend all day board gaming, well, then I probably don't need all of my dice and those rule books and whatever, On the other hand, so I will kind of like divide stuff out. I'll continually, just because I'm a little obsessive compulsive, I will continually pack and repack my little day bag for whatever I'm taking in the convention that day.
It may not feel like a lot. Oh, sure, it's only 2 rule books. That's nothing. I walk around all day at my friend's place. I bring it over there. I walk around with it. No, it's a different story at a con, and that thing's hanging on your shoulder or on your back the entire time. Even 10 or 15 pounds will wear you out. So pack what you need for the day if you can.
The other thing that you have to reckon with is that your pack is going to get heavier whether you plan for it or not, because you're going to walk into the vendor hall and go, oh yeah, I wanted to pick up a copy of that. Or I tried this game. Oh, I'm going to take this home with me. I want my buddies to play it too. Chances are you're going to buy at least one thing during your time at the con, wherever you are. Even at the smaller conventions, the vendors are there to service the gaming public and have stuff available. So they'll run deals, or they'll have stuff that you'll have tried that you want to pick up the rule book for. You're going to want to treat yourself. You're on vacation, and you're going to want to bring home a souvenir. And next thing you know, like that vintage box of Conquest of the Empire, is something that you've got slung under your arm or whatever, and you're bumping into people, and no one's happy, including you.
If you're looking for those vintage, rare, hard to find things, there's usually an auction at these types of conventions. I know Gen Con has one. And also, these are also a great place to go and find some really nice original artwork. They usually have an art show at these conventions. I like mini nerds, like to decorate my house with, really cool pictures of dragons and things like that. So, that's one of the things I love going to conventions to do, actually, is to find, some original art or a rare, hard to find or ancient game and bring it home.
And a lot of these conventions will also have an artist's alley, where a lot of the artists will actually be there doing original sketches and things like that. especially if you like webcomics. If you know, Randall Milholland from Something Positive goes to a lot of these conventions. A lot of the webcomic artists will go to these things. They'll have their merch. They'll have little sketches. They'll have original art that you can buy at the convention. So yeah, definitely make sure to go down Artist Alley. And you'll also see a lot of crafts people doing all sorts of cool stuff. All that awesome stuff you see on Etsy. If they're local to that con, they're probably going to be there with a booth.
And I will say, just in general, that those artists, like, number one, like, if you can patronize them with your dollars, definitely do that. But number two, it tends to be a rough slog for them at a con in terms of a lot of people just come and look and walk away. And, you know, they're, you know, as social as any gamer is, at the very least. So, you know, take the time to talk with them about their process and find out what, you know, how they got into this and whatnot. Like, I always feel bad whenever it's kind of just like, you know, it feels like you're sort of doing the walk of shame sometimes down Artist Alley because nobody's talking to anybody.
So, yeah, I think that's a really good point, but let's expand on that a little bit. Like, if you do go to a convention, you're going to talk to a creator, like an artist, or an actor, like Tom, or a game designer like Grady. If you're going to talk to anybody there who's, you know, doing things or showing off their products, or even just there to run games, or a guest of what matter, what are the tips? How do you guys expect people to talk to you in a way that is the most successful?
Not in the bathroom.
Yeah, not in the bathroom. Yeah, Mac Martin has a great story about that.
Every celebrity has a good story about that one. The rule of thumb is, if the creator's dick is in their hands, shut your mouth.
I guess I haven't quite made it yet because I've never had anybody try to talk to me in the bathroom. But Mac Martin certainly has, and yeah, so don't do that. Don't talk to them in the bathroom. But so Tom and Grady, that's the question for you guys. What are the best ways to approach people like yourselves at a convention?
Grady, do you want to handle the game designer end of things?
I'm not sure what to say to that.
Can I tell you my character story of a character that I've worked on for the last 15 years for your setting? And by the way, I changed everything in your setting because I didn't like it.
Oh, they can do that if they want to. I mean, you know, if they bought the book, if they bought the book, they've paid the entry fee, they can do what they want with it.
But is that the most successful way to talk to you?
Probably not. I haven't had a whole lot of people talk to me about this setting. Not at conventions, really.
I think one thing that you may have to realize in dealing with the creators is that you might be a bigger nerd about whatever they wrote than they actually
no question. Yeah.
I've seen people pin, you know, designers down on some weird obscure question like, where did this come from? And it was like, you know what, maybe that was something that just like occurred to them that day and they threw it in as a little flourish. Maybe not everybody's Ed Greenwood where there's like a 95-page backstory to every little detail that happened to find its way into a rule book. So I think there's like, realize that they don't necessarily have time to immerse themselves in the nerditude as much as you might.
And even if they do, they may not know exactly which draft you're talking about, because I'm sure both Ross and Grady can back me up on this. When you're writing something, especially if you're designing rules for it, you're going to have about 15 or 20 drafts of whatever you're doing.
I'm still trying to imagine a world where everyone is Ed Greenwood. That's a little crazy. But yeah, you got a point. You know, yeah, when you're a designer, you go through different drafts. I know that the draft of Terracide that I played through is probably not the same as the final. I know that the draft of, you know, the games that I worked on and created, like Rogue Trader and Deathwatch and Edge of the Empire, those are not the final product either. And yeah, there's a good chance that I'll be like, I'm not sure what you're talking about when you come up to me and mention a specific thing. But, you know, I think game designers, we're always willing to talk to people about it. We're always interested to hear what you think. But, you know, it's a question of like, if you want to be successful at talking to me or talking to Grady or talking to other game designers, your best bet is to not lead with the character story. Just saying.
The interesting thing to me is that, you know, this thing that I did that started out as basically a homebrew setting that people just kept asking me, hey, are you going to publish this or not? I had no intention of doing that, and I'm still amazed that it got published. So I'm just like, the fact that people are talking about it at all I still haven't gotten over the shock of that, honestly.
I'm still, I get recognized at cons. And I'm like, I don't even do anything. I interview people and review games and do a podcast. I wasn't even doing the podcast when I was going to a lot of cons, but I still had people recognizing me. I'm like, the hell? Game designers were recognizing me. That was
it's
weird.
It's
like,
one of the best things about the industry is really just sort of meeting people who enjoy what you do. Wouldn't you say, Tom?
I think, I mean, that's definitely a big payoff is that, you know, like Grady said, you've created something, you've released it into the world, and everybody in our hobby is, like, it demands to be hacked or altered in some way. You know, it's not like if you're a novelist and somebody says, oh, I really liked this chapter in the book where so-and-so does whatever it is. You know, like, you've crystallized moments. You've crafted a definitive experience of that book. And then if people want to do fanfic, it's almost kind of like this weird subculture thing, right? It's not the accepted way to enjoy it. Whereas if I take the Tomb of Horrors and I run it for my group, their experience is going to be different and unique from everybody else's experience. Yeah, there'll be a bunch of common things where somebody sticks their hand into the giant demon mouth and gets disintegrated. Fine, whatever. Oh, spoiler alert.
Again.
Sorry, everybody.
Episodes ago, I talked about how I got a group to jump in that thing 3 times.
Right. So, what I'm getting at is that by the nature of our hobby, whatever you create is designed to be engaged and altered by the fans and the players that consume it. And so I think that's what people, you know, as somebody who's created a character and created a few things that have gone out there, like you know, a group of guys actually played through the world's worst dungeon crawl and did it as a Google Hangout and put it on YouTube. And for me, it was like immensely gratifying to watch this. It certainly wasn't anything like the experience that I provided live at the con, but it was really amazing to see somebody take something that I had created and then watch them put their own spin on it. And I think that's, you know, when I want to have that fan interaction, I want to know that somebody got something, was inspired by what I did, and that's essentially all I really need from them. Like, I don't want them to monopolize my time so that other people can't.
That's a big deal.
Can't interact with me.
That's a big deal.
But I do want to know, like, oh, hey, I'm just gratified when somebody says, I really, you know, I love your show, or I loved this joke, or I loved this episode, or whatever it was. Especially when you're either like a YouTube creator, like the stuff that I do, or if you're a pencil and paper, you know, writer, a game designer. You put this stuff out there, and then you only really hear about it through the comment section of the internet, which is not necessarily the most rewarding funnel for feedback.
Tom's got a great point about not monopolizing time. I think that's something I'm sensitive to. Certainly, when I'm trying to talk to someone, is I say, "Hey, listen, I just want to say a couple things, and then I'll let you get back to whatever you're doing." And part of that comes from like some really bad experiences with that. There's an artist I'm a big fan of, Fred Perry. Guy's excellent. He does a comic book called Gold Digger. He was at Project Acon one year, and I tried to come, I basically just wanted to tell him how much I appreciated his artwork and get him to sign the thing, you know. Well, there was these guys that basically formed a human wall around Fred, and they weren't letting anyone else get in there to talk to him, and they were all commissioning him for their own specific pieces of art, you know, but that was it. That they were not letting anyone else in there. Well, let me tell you, I had just flown from Korea, where I was stationed in the army, so I had crossed many thousands of miles to get there, and I just elbowed my way into that damn circle to get a chance to talk to Fred. But so I've had some bad experiences with that, so I would echo, you know, what Tom said there, and just, you know, be aware that especially if someone else is obviously there waiting, you know, don't monopolize them. Say what you got to say.
I think even if nobody is there waiting, like if you buttonhole somebody in the hallway, or if they're standing looking at, you know, a set of rule books or something at some other vendor's booth or whatever, just keep in mind that the chances are they've carved out 10 minutes of precious time out of their day to do whatever they're doing, or they're probably on their way someplace else to take a business meeting, to talk at a panel, to, you know, run a game or whatever. It's that their schedule is nowhere near as flexible as yours is.
Excellent points.
Excuse me, Mr. Lommel. I'm a big fan of your work. I love the Dungeon Bastard. I just want to let you know that. I just had one quick question for you. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Can I sign here? Do you want a card? Can I sign something for you?
That's a good interaction.
I'm happy to have those, you know, those interactions. Yeah.
if the person has free time and they're in a mood to be social, I did the same thing with Patton Oswalt when I met him randomly on the street in Austin one time during South by Southwest. I was walking down the street and he was on his cell phone. I immediately stopped and did not approach. The second after he closed his phone, like maybe 0.7 seconds later, I was, Mr. Oswalt, I'm a big fan of your work, and I just want to say I really like your stuff, shake your hands, and I'm going to leave you alone before I completely nerd out. And he laughed, and I got giddy because I made my favorite comedian laugh. And he had time to talk. So we stood there in the street, got out of everyone's way, and just chatted for like 10 or 15 minutes because he had the time and was in the mood to do so. I held him to no obligation to do so, but he wanted to. If he were busy, I would have understood and let him get on about his day. But I got to meet him, shake hands. I appreciate your work.
Now, this is not to say that you shouldn't be, that you need to be, extra solicitous to celebrities, because everyone who's been at that convention has paid money and traveled distance to be there. So you should be on your best behavior pretty much for everybody. I think that's a fair statement.
Daryl brings up another point, kind of tangentially, which I think is very important to consider, which is I've always got time for, or 99% of the time I have time for a quick, like, hey, can we take a picture? Absolutely great. I'd love to take a picture with you. Fantastic. But like Daryl said, get out of the way. That's like I know you maybe ran into somebody in the middle of the hall and like, oh, hey, can we quick take a picture? Or you run into somebody who's got that perfect solid snake costume or whatever. That's great, but you know what? Move to the side of the hallway.
I've heard so many,
that's the big
especially the
thing.
ones who have the big, huge, giant like angel wing costumes, and there's like 3 of them, and they'll stop right in the middle of the aisle. By my 3rd convention last year, I was just screw it. I walked right in front of the picture, just because I had places to be at, and you guys are monopolizing a 20-foot wide thing for your picture.
Right.
Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Almost all these convention centers have these big, huge, giant entry hallways outside the convention center. If you really have to get that picture with the cosplayers and everything, try to do it out there where there's a lot more room and not many people trying to get by.
That's a good point you bring up about, the costuming and everything, because there's people who like to wear costumes, and you should really read the convention rules before you go. Make sure you know what you need to do if you're wearing a costume. And even if you're not, it doesn't hurt to know what the rules are, right?
And I think there's the flip side of it too, which is the person who's taking the picture has the responsibility, because I've seen that too, where the cosplayers are standing off to one side in the hallway, but then the person taking the picture will back up into traffic and stand there with no awareness of all these people who are backing up or avoiding them or whatever. So it's something that both sides of the equation I think need to be cognizant of, which is like, let's make sure we're all in a spot where we can take a picture without holding up the whole flow of things.
I think a big part of that is just Wheaton's Law. Don't be a dick.
Well, that's true for,
Yeah, that's just generally true.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're getting close to the last call here at the Tavern. Let's ask Grady and Tom for their final thoughts on the Convention Survival Guide. What do you need to do to survive your first convention? Final thoughts, Grady.
If anything goes wrong, keep your head. That's the best advice I can give you.
Stay calm, don't freak out.
Yeah, I was at a convention. We're back to Gen Con again. I had my badge sent to will call, and instead of having it mailed to me, I went to will call. I had no badge, and they were giving me a song and dance about not being able to check their computer system to see if I had paid for it. Of course, they can do that there, but the guy that I was talking to said, no, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that here. I ended up at Convention HQ shortly thereafter. It was down the hall and around the corner, but I was at Convention HQ office. I was one radio call away from the head honcho of Gen Con. But I kept my cool through the whole thing and just said, okay, what do I need to do to straighten this out? Of course, the people at HQ, they knew how to check the computer system, and they said, of course you're paid, and they printed out my receipt. And one of their people walked me right back to customer service. And they took me to the head of customer service, and they said, this man paid for a badge. Please give him a badge. I kept my cool through that whole thing, and, I didn't, blow up at anybody. I didn't explode, and it took them a while, but they got it straightened out. They got me my badge. You work with the staff at the con. They'll straighten things out for you. So you just got to, keep your cool, work the system, and it'll come together. So that's my final advice is things go wrong at conventions. There's no need to, lose your cool, work through it, and it'll come together.
And the staff is there to help you.
They are. Then they will.
All right. That's good. Mr. Lommel.
I think I'm going to, in some ways, piggyback off of Grady's advice, which is we're all there to have fun. And don't put your fun at a priority over anyone else's.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I think that's kind of, in some ways, that's what he was saying, but it applies to just being a good guest at the convention. And I think the other thing, too, is you especially your first year, you can't do it all. And so specifically schedule yourself so that not only do you do a bare bones set of things that you absolutely want to do, but you leave yourself time to do the things that you're going to discover. So leave yourself time to play a demo game or play one of the many pickup games that's invariably going to happen. Or, I can't tell you the number of games that I've gotten into because somebody was starting a session of D&D or whatever. They had a scenario all ready to go, and they had 8 players registered, and 2 of the guys didn't show up. And they're like, "Hey, are you looking to play D&D? We just need 2 more." Yeah, I want to play D&D. Yeah, well, guess what? I got nothing going on for the next 3.5 hours. Perfect. Let's sit down and play. So you're going to want to have time to go in the dealer hall and just wander around. You're going to want to have time, to just frankly sit down and have a burger and a beer and talk with your buddies about like what you want to do tomorrow or what happened that day or what game you can't wait to play.
Right?
Don't overcommit. It's really easy to do. We're all nerds. We're all enthusiastic about our hobby. I for one am guilty of that to the ninth degree. But I've learned in the years that I've gone that like, for me, going to a con is about one big thing, and that's doing stuff that I can't do in my home game. So whether that's playing a game or playing a scenario that we wouldn't normally play, or demoing something, or meeting somebody, or learning about something new that I wouldn't be able to check out here at my home game. Like, that's why you go to the convention, to like kind of like indulge in new experiences and broaden your experience of role playing. If you're just going to go there to prove that you're the alpha nerd and you're the king of the geek pile, you're not being a good guest. You're not being a good gamer. Be a good gamer. Be a good gamer. It's a team sport, everybody. That's my advice.
Point.
So treat it that way.
That is an excellent point. I'm going to build on what Tom said right then, because that's exactly the right thing, is to just be a good gamer. And, a thing that's kind of been, more awareness has been raised to this, I think, lately more than anything else. Part of that is harassment. There's a lot of there's a lot of ladies out there who like to cosplay. There's a lot of ladies out there who like to game. And they're getting, even from those people we talked about taking photos, there's ways to take photos that are the right way, and there's ways to compliment people on their costumes that is the right way, and there's absolutely the wrong way to do that too. So Whedon's Law applies. Do not be a dick. Don't harass anybody in any way, shape, or form. Just, realize they're there to have fun just like you are. And your fun is not more important than theirs. Those are all really excellent points from Tom, and I just wanted to make sure and hammer home a little bit more. And so that's going to take us to Daryl.
I just had a couple of tips that we didn't, kind of short on time, so we didn't get to everything because it's a lot to talk about. But biggest tips are, number one, Ross said this, but I want to reiterate it. Read the rules at the convention. Everyone is going to have something a little bit different. Some of them will allow you to carry a water bottle with you. Some of them will allow no outside food or drinks. Don't try to sneak one in. If you get caught, you're kicked out. If they say no alcohol, don't try to sneak it into the hotel coffee cup and fill it up with bourbon before you head to the floor. They will catch you. You will get thrown out. That was not meant to be a tip, by the way. That was, but if they have, a lot of them will have.
Do you have a list of any other things we should not definitely do,
I'm writing
Daryl?
this down right now.
But yeah, a lot of them have zero tolerance policies for any sort of violence, any weapons, even costume weapons. Zero tolerance on drugs on premises. Pay attention to those and do not break them, because you will get kicked out, you will get banned for life, and a lot of these conventions talk to each other too. So if you get banned from one, you may find out that you're banned from other ones. And oh, you bought that pass in this name? Oh, you came up as red flag for us. You can't come to our convention and no refunds on your badge. Sorry. So make sure you're abiding those rules. Tip number 2, wear comfortable shoes. You're going to be walking a lot more than you're probably used to. Be sure to dress comfortably. And number 3, for those drinkers out there, moderation, because I'm going to tell you, I've done it every con I've been to, and I keep telling myself I'm not going to do it this time. I'm probably going to do it all summer long, but that Sunday morning is a bitch when you've got that weekend-long hangover that just caught up to you and nailed you Sunday morning. It's not fun. Don't do it. Drink in moderation. And my biggest one, be nice to the staff. Be polite, say please and thank you, tip your waitresses, tip the bellboys. These people are there to help you. They're there to serve you. Treat them well, and they will treat you well. It goes back to don't be a dick. If you tip properly, they're going to remember you and be nicer to you. And they're also going to remember, oh, hey, all those gamers at the con were really nice and they tipped really well. So they're not going to make any sort of snide remarks under their breath about, hey, look at all these nerds.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some excellent places to go. Gen Con, I always recommend Scotty's Brewhouse if you want excellent service. And, Daryl's got a great point about making sure to tip everybody because, that is their work. That's what they do.
And that is especially true for our international listeners because a lot of other countries don't tip. In the U.S., it's expected anytime basically someone hands you any sort of food or drink to give them some sort of tip. Usually you want to do 15 to 25% of whatever the cost is. So keep that in mind and budget it whenever you're budgeting for your food if you're not used to tipping.
But yeah, do some internet research on that. So let's start with Grady. Grady, what is your newest thing and where can I find you on the interwebs?
Oh, my newest thing I'm working on, or?
Sure.
Let's see. Newest thing I'm working on.
What's coming out soon from Grady Elliot?
Yes. I'm currently working on the Savage Worlds edition of Terracide, which is the science fiction setting about the destruction of humanity's home system and the people who survive it.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Terracide.
It's pretty much just what I was talking about there. The home system.
It starts with Earth blowing up. That's how the game begins.
The home system is gone, and the survivors are the people who were living in the extrasolar colonies, basically space colonies within, say 20 light years of Earth for the most part. And there weren't a whole lot of them. Basically, 1% of the human race is still alive.
Now, this is a hard sci-fi setting.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
If you were going to recommend this to fans of hard sci-fi, is there a novel series maybe that it's like that would be a good fit for the tone and style?
I looked to Alistair Reynolds' Revelation Space for a lot of it. That certainly wasn't the only inspiration for it, but that was a large part of it, yeah. Oh, there were a lot of other sources, but I don't have my bibliography right in front of me, so I'm going to leave it at that. That was one of my favorite series, yeah.
The listeners might find it kind of curious how I know just so much about Grady and his game. The honest truth is Grady and I were actually roommates for about a year and a half, wasn't it, in Maryland?
And we knew each other for a while before that, too, and yeah. Ross was one of the people who was involved in some of the very earliest playtests.
That's right. And Grady ran some truly unforgettable games for us in his his superhero game, which was called Vendetta Rhapsody, which was absolutely beautiful in a lot of ways. And Terracide, of course, I got to play in some of the early playtests of that as well. And Grady was one of the first original players of Shadows Angelus, which
was amazing.
Anybody who knows me probably knows it's the the great unpublished campaign setting of mine. But there's that. Thank you, Grady. And where can we find you on the interwebs if we want to learn more about Terracide?
Oh gosh, the hero version of Terracide is available in the I think it's on Hero Games right now. It's also on Blackworm Games, and it's available on Amazon. At this point, I don't actually have a website as such, so that's something I need to think about doing very soon.
So Blackworm Games is at www.blackworm, that's WYRM, blackworm.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
And there is also, actually there is a Terracide preview thread in the licensee forum. on Pinnacle Games discussion forum.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah. So there is
excellent.
some advanced information about Terracide, the Savage Worlds edition on that forum.
All right, and a cat apparently.
Yes.
Not mine interrupting this time.
Cats and the internet, they go together. Okay, Mr. Lommel, what is your latest thing, and where can we find you on the interwebs?
My latest thing, as always, is there's two latest things, as a matter of fact. You can find everything Dungeon Bastard related at dungeonbastard.com. There's also a Facebook presence at facebook.com/dungeonbastard, or I'm on Twitter at Dungeon Bastard. So those are the immediate things that you can check me out at. About every 2 weeks, we put up a new episode with various filler content here and there. I will also be appearing as Bill Cavalier, the Dungeon Bastard, at BerserkCon in Duluth. This is their second year. If you are in the Upper Midwest, that is June 6th through the 8th, and I will not only be appearing and signing and all of those fun things, but I also be running some games. So it's BerserkCon, BerserkCon, BerserkCon. That's in Duluth in June. I will obviously be at Gen Con, I'm sure involved with Nazcrag, as well as involved in the ENnie Awards, the only industry award in role-playing games that is decided by the fans and for the fans. I will be co-hosting that with Jen Page in August at Gen Con. And finally, I will be appearing as the Dungeon Bastard again at Gamehole Con in Madison in November. So there's a lot of Midwest love there. Both of those cons, those smaller cons, excellent opportunities to not only get your game on, but meet various people from out the gamosphere. So I will be there. I'm also involved, like I said, in Fear of Girls. I'm one of the leads in the web series Fear of Girls, and we're about to premiere our 4th installment. They're 20-minute episodes, so I don't really want to say that it's like our 4th episode and make it sound like it's weak. They're kind of like mini vignettes, and that starts next week. So those are the things, Twitter is the best way to keep track of me, definitely.
I'm just curious, do you run the entire game in character as Bill Cavalier?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes. What's the point of playing if you're not going to play with Bill Cavalier? Come on, Ross. Do you think... Look, Tom Lommel is a dish rag, okay? That guy is a pushover. I've seen games that he's running. He lets characters survive.
4 hours in character
is
a challenge for anybody, I would say. So that's kudos to you, sir.
It's a challenge I'm definitely up for.
So if we're the listeners... for the listeners who may not know, can you tell us a little bit about Bill Cavalier and the Dungeon Master? Just like, what is it and who is he?
Yeah, so basically, it's I'm probably going to give you the creepiest way that it's been described, which is sort of like Chuck Norris meets Richard Simmons for Dungeons and Dragons players.
Wow.
So you just wrap your brain around that. So basically, Bill Cavalier is sort of like, he is that alpha nerd who thinks too much of himself and has decided that there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to play role-playing games, and you're doing it wrong if you're not doing it the Bill Cavalier way.
The best introduction that I have seen to it is probably the very first episode, the little short you did where you were posing as the gaming coach and training the one guy, and he's sitting there practicing rolling the die, and without even looking, Bill Cavalier says that's a D12.
Yes, you're rolling the wrong dice. Come on.
Does Bill champion
that's the guys
the palm method or the cup method?
Well, I think there has to be a little bit of there has to be a little swizzle.
Little
right?
wrist action in there.
Yeah. You have to warm them a little bit. You can't just pick them up and drop them.
So there's a shake involved.
Yeah, there's got to be a shake, and then the flick, the down flick. Here's the thing, Ross. You want to trick the die into what's going on. I'm going back and forth. Whoa! I'm going down to the table. You want to surprise that die for the maximum possible result. It's scientifically proven that when dice are surprised, they roll higher.
Wow, that is fantastic, right there.
Yeah, so that's a little taste of the Dungeon Bastard. I have episodes that cover almost every aspect of D&D, from a whole series on what class and race to play to a specific one-off episodes dealing with Edition Wars and all that sort of fun stuff.
I do believe I quoted you when we did our Edition Wars episode. We actually titled ours, and it was kind of a riff on that. Edition Wars are bullshit.
Right, exactly.
But I believe your exact words were, do you care if dwarf is a class or a race? Who gives a shit?
You know,
Exactly.
I gotta say, right now I would love to have a game, sit down and play a game with Tom Lommel and characters, Bill Cavalier, Jolly Blackburn. You got to get the game science guy Luzacci in there for the dice rolling bits. And man, wouldn't that be one hell of a game?
There's definitely, like, Bill Cavalier has an old school kind of foundation with some sort of new school twist to him. But yeah. And I will say that in the Ask the Bastard segments that I do, 98% of those questions are actual questions that are submitted to me. It's not like Ask a Ninja where they run out of stuff to talk about, so they start making up questions. I mean, these with very, very, I can't even think of more than maybe 3 different things where I'm like, well, I want to tackle this or whatever. I don't make up questions. I might edit them down, but those are real questions from real gamers, and that's something that I actually pride myself on.
Fantastic. And it's on behalf of Daryl and myself, we want to say thank you. We're very grateful to have you guys on board the show for tonight, and we'd love to have you back sometime, both you and Grady.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I love being on.
It's great to be here.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. And looks like the bartender's giving us the eye. The Imperial Guard are coming by to check that the places or taverns are being shut down. So until next time, may all your hits be crits.
That's it for this week's Gamers Tavern. Next week, we're having our first State of the Industry address, where we will talk about where the tabletop industry has been the past year, where it is now, and where we think it should go in the future. Our guests are Gamers Tavern Game Table GM Brendan Ginsimer and the creator of Savage Worlds himself, Shane Hensley. We actually got him recorded literally the day after it was announced that Deadlands would be one of the launch titles for the new Xbox Live lineup of live-action TV shows, so make sure to check that out. And we got some great comments this past week, but to be honest, my setup is still not fully done. As you might can tell, the new studio still needs some work. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to get to those this week, but next episode, I will definitely address all your comments. And if you would like to leave a comment about any of our podcasts, go to gamerstavern.org, where you can also find our store where you can get many products with our logo to show your support of the show, as well as our You Gotta Be Crittin' Me t-shirt. Other ways you can show your support are to visit our sponsors, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or review us on iTunes. You can also find both Ross and I at Comic Palooza this weekend in Houston, Texas. That's May 23rd through the 26th. If you're in the area, stop by because we're going to be doing a lot of ad hoc recordings for the show, including at least one recording with the Double Clicks. So you can find out more information about the convention at comicpalooza.com. The Gamers Tavern is licensed under an Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 license. Music for the 1 Degree ad is copyright Nick Jaworski, all rights reserved, used with permission. Music for the Audible ad is Tavern Brawl Demo, copyright Save or Die, all rights reserved, used with permission. Music for the Animation Celebration is copyright Undead Henson, all rights reserved, used with permission. Until next time, the tavern is closed.
Hi, this is Rich
And Amanda.
for Animation Celebration.
This July 4th, come on down to the convention. July 4th through the 6th, Moody Gardens Hotel and Resort and Spa down in Galveston, Texas. We're going to be set up with concerts, vendors, artists, and a lot of gaming. All the usual convention fun, and Robert Schwab.
Robert will be doing an exclusive epic D&D gaming night with 6 players per night. These 6 players will be able to sit down and have a closed session with food, drinks, and unlimited supply of Doritos and Mountain Dew for that whole session. This will be some pretty awesome gaming with one of the creators of Dungeons & Dragons.
What happens in the room stays in the room. We'll have a lot of other good VIP games going on. We have Munchkin, Warhammer, Cards Against Humanity, official tournaments for Magic the Gathering out, awesome prizes to win for our main concert night outside. 4th of July, there's even a fireworks show set up with our bands, the Cybertronic Spree, all the way from Canada, dressed up like the Transformers, followed by Unknown Henson from Cartoon Network's Early's Kyler on Squidbillies. Pick up your tickets online while you can. This resort has never not been sold out that weekend. We recommend you book early. The web address is www.animation-celebrationgalveston.com/home. Tickets are on sale now. We look forward to seeing you all there.
Try out. Beer Fun.